why am I pairing vulgarity with optimism? And what the hell is fuck you optimism? Fuck you optimism can be the act of crushing your fraudulent inner negative critic, or the act of giving an external pessimistic influence an optimistic middle finger salute. Fuck you optimism is that rational, calculated, positive defiance that percolates when you've surveyed all the data and you've heard all the naysayers, and your internal spirit voice respectfully flips the bird to those who've told you that you can't do something simply because they couldn't. Yeah, I know. Flipping the bird is not exactly respectful, any more than optimism pairs naturally with vulgar expressions. But this is precisely the spirit that needs to be invoked in such times. Now, you don't need to say F you directly at or to those around you who you love or otherwise respect, but you absolutely do need to say it to the unfounded, self-originated, projected doubts they heap on you. You need to say it privately, but loudly, within your own spirit to activate your ability to leap into alignment with your calling journey. Because the truth is that it is often the people closest to you who carry the risk of their own biases that you need to guard against the most. In the lyrics to the song The Real Slim Shady by Eminem, Mr. Mathers acknowledges that Will Smith doesn't have to curse in his raps to sell records, further explaining that he, Eminem, does have to curse, that is. Well, and fuck Will Smith and you two for even bringing it up.
Will Smith don't gotta cuss in his raps to sell records. Well, I do, so fuck him and fuck you too.
And while that may be true for Will Smith's rapping, I think in his acting, he metaphorically cursed in his role playing former stockbroker Chris Gardner in the film The Pursuit of Happiness, by unknowingly exercising some serious fuck you optimism. Let me explain. As the movie and his life story goes, Chris was broke and getting broker, selling medical technology, bone density scanners. His wife was less than supportive of his idea to chase after a dream of becoming a stockbroker.
Stockbroker?
Yeah.
Not an astronaut?
She could only see the whole of their current circumstances. In her view, Chris was his failures, but Chris bypassed her permission and saw a different future for himself. Chris understood the power of failure rule number 5, you are not your failures. He refused to believe that he couldn't be like the stockbrokers, with the natural smiles and nice cars that he would observe when he hustled around San Francisco trying to sell his bone density scanners. They told him all he needed was just to be good at math and be good with people, and he believed them. Sales kept declining though. His wife left him, and Chris found himself homeless while taking care of his young son. Yet, in this unbelievably difficult set of circumstances, Chris followed the promptings of the divinity of purpose pulsating inside. He kept chasing his dream to lift himself off the streets by becoming a stockbroker. There was no one close to him who would encourage him in this idea. It would have sounded too fantastical, too unrealistic. In the movie, there is a scene in which Will Smith is playing basketball with his son. As his son is practicing his shot, Will Smith begins to advise him that he'll probably just be, about as good as he was at basketball when he was young. He goes on to tell his son,
That's kind of the way it works, and I was below average. So you'll probably ultimately rank somewhere around there, so really, you'll excel at a lot of things, just not this. I don't want you out here shooting this ball around all day and night.
Instantly, his son's entire demeanor is deflated. He crumbles into a disinterested participant. His father somehow thought it was okay to prescribe mediocrity to cure the boy's enthusiasm for shooting hoops, but it wasn't. His son begins packing up the ball, ready to pack it all in for good. He lost his drive. Mediocrity is not attractive. So then, Will Smith, as Gardner, realizes what he had done. He has treated his son precisely the way his wife had treated him. After several seconds of emotional silence, he pivots and delivers a new message to his son, a strong message of fuck you optimism. He tells him next,
Hey, don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me, all right?
All right.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
So Gardner's message of fuck you optimism not only didn't exclude his own messaging as a target, but deliberately put in scope his realization that his own biased messaging to his son was the very poison that needed to be combated by decisive application of fuck you optimism. Retired Navy SEAL, triathlete, author of Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, says that most of us fail in life because we're afraid of what everyone around us is thinking. So we live by the narrative of other people. When Goggins went to his Navy SEAL recruiter, he was weighing in at a full 297 pounds, visibly obese. The recruiter told him he wasn't going to be able to make it. But Goggins refused to receive that narrative. Goggins knew that the recruiter was projecting his own energy onto him because the recruiter knew that he couldn't be a Navy SEAL. So Goggins rejected this message decisively with a healthy dose of fuck you optimism. Now recognized as one of the greatest athletes in the world, years after his remarkable career as being only the 36th African American to ever become a Navy SEAL, Goggins reflects back on those doubts that were cast upon him. He accurately observes that one of the biggest problems in the world is that other people get in people's heads and puppet master their life. And most of these puppet masters are negative and projecting their own doubts into other people's lives. David Goggins knows full well that when you practice fuck you optimism with discernment, you get to the point where you really don't care what people think of you. And it's in this space that you can then become positively dangerous. This doesn't mean you don't choose to have smart people around you whose advice you trust, even when it goes against your instincts. You want those people in your life. But you have to make sure their advice is framed around who you need to be and not who they want you to be. It can't be framed around their own limited shackles that they then cast upon you. Now, fuck you optimism is not always something you need to point external, aimed at the distorted messaging coming at you from others. Sometimes you need to exercise fuck you optimism within your own spirit and between the two opposing cells that sometimes emerge and argue within you. I had a conversation with my son some time ago when he was struggling with negative thoughts. I explained the concept of fuck you optimism. I gave him examples from my own life when part of my spirit would feel crushed by failure and negative circumstances that would then overpower my will and self-image falsely and temporarily. It was in these times that I would invoke the power of fuck you optimism to overcome the lying darkness within. By attaching myself to the divinity of purpose, I would reject my own inner lies with a packed punch of fuck you optimism from one side of my spirit to the other. The emerging light inside would then suppress the dying darkness within. This is how you slay the destructive self and embolden the rising self. Now, this is what attorney, TV host, and author Mel Robbins captures in her book, The 5-Second Rule. Her book is a study on the art of quickly and decisively reversing negative self-talk by acknowledging that mood follows action. Her philosophy and advice aligns with the concept of fuck you optimism when applied to the battle between the two conflicting inner selves that we all struggle to manage. Mel lays down wisdom on how to decisively flip the bird to your negative self-talk so you can quickly get on with a productive day without wallowing in the lazy malaise of paralytic self-doubt. So don't let others tell you that you can't when it is clear that they are not even observing who you really are and rightly interpreting the potential of your life. Don't let your doubting inner saboteur dominate your vibrant, healthy, ambitious self. Learn to invoke strong, effective fuck you optimism directed both to misguided external sources and destructive internal sources when it is called for. Because failure rule number 5, you are not your failures, will free you from the chains of the projections of others and the lies of negative self-talk.